it is the law as written that each provision under reconciliation will be costed out. What does this cost? How does that compare if provision is not in the law? That means it's comparing it to current law. What the proposal from the budget chair has been is, well, as chair of the budget committee, I can basically compare that provision to any imaginary alternative that I want. That's called current policy. And what they're basically saying is, look, if we extend a tax provision, we can pretend it would have been extended anyway, even if we hadn't put it into the law, and therefore it costs nothing. And this is doing two things. This is creating a huge attack on a couple of the pillars of fiscal responsibility. One of those pillars is that there will be no deficits created by reconciliation bill after a 10-year period. By creating this imaginary comparison, then they can say, well, if it doesn't cost anything, we're not creating deficits beyond 10 years when they clearly are. The second is the foundation for fiscal responsibility in 1974 was all 100 senators agreeing they'd quit using smoke and mirrors, and they would use estimates from the Congressional Budget Office on programs, from the tax committee, Joint Tax Committee on revenues, and we'd quit lying to ourselves and lying to the American people. But this artificial magic math baseline also blows that up. So you're talking a bill that has some $3+ trillion additional debt.
Well, so does the parliamentarian kick it out then?
Well, so the question is, in the Senate process, how will that be addressed? We would like the parliamentarian to rule on this. We think the law is very clear that addresses how you cost out provisions, but decisions in the Senate can also be decided by a vote of the body and attempt to bypass the parliamentarian. That's what the Republicans did on the Congressional Review Act when they said, hey, it was written to apply to rules, but, I think a waiver sounds like a rule. And so they bypassed the ruling of the parliamentarian. We are doing everything we can to say we want to prevent that from happening, but we're also not the majority. So I hope that we can defend the integrity of the process, but not guaranteed.
Well, Senator, as we consider votes in your chamber, knowing you have a seat on the Foreign Relations Committee, we are expecting a vote tonight on the War Powers resolution that is being put forward by your colleague, Democratic Senator Tim Kaine. Do you expect the votes will be there for that? Why is this even necessary when the Trump administration has suggested that military action against Iran is over, at least for now?
Well, they've suggested it's over, and then they've suggested, well, maybe it's not over. And so essentially it is a vote on defending the Constitution. The Constitution says that the president cannot declare war or go to war against another country, that prerogative is restricted to Congress. And the reason for that is the founders said, look, the issues of war are so sizable as they should never be vested with a single person. And think about the wars in Afghanistan and in Iraq. In that case, well, we lost some 7,000 military members, had 50,000 with serious life-altering conditions, spent $8 trillion on those wars. It's a reminder of how consequential going to war is and why there should be a broader debate than just leaving it to the whim of a single person. So I hope we have the votes. I have a feeling that we might not. There's a lot of intense tribal partisanship that has become stronger and stronger as the media world in America has split into two very separate bubbles of people getting different information. It's really accentuated the partisan divide. So by the principle of the Constitution, we should vote for this tonight, but I wouldn't want to bet that we'll have the votes to pass it.
Well, and another question for you on Iran, Senator. President Trump took to Truth Social earlier this hour to suggest he had been thinking about removing sanctions on Iran, but after a statement from the Ayatollah about winning the war against Israel, he disagreed with. He says that he has immediately dropped all work on sanctions relief. Do you still have hope of a diplomatic ultimate resolution here?
There has to be a diplomatic resolution because otherwise you don't have any idea what has happened to the some 880 pounds of 60% enriched uranium, or how that might be utilized to create 90% or processed to create a path to a nuclear weapon. And so there is a win-win that can come out of this, but it's going to only happen through a diplomatic agreement. And in fact, the Trump administration had folks who were carrying on that conversation before Israel attacked Iran and during the time that the attacks were going on. And it's you can't ultimately resolve this challenge and other challenges. The use of Iran of ballistic missiles that could carry a warhead, the funding of militias throughout an arc that stretches over to Lebanon. Those issues have to be resolved through diplomacy.